Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ursula de Cruz. Welcome to the podcast Career Conversations. The aim of the show is to help students choose from different career options. Today's show is about careers in business technology management, and I'm joined today by Mr. Jayden Pereira. Mr. Jayden Pereira is an enterprise tech professional with many years of experience in various companies such as Kindle and IBM. In addition to his professional life, Mr. Pereira was also active in many societies, activities, and events at college. Thank you for joining me today, Mr. Pereira.
Awesome. Great to have me on the show.
And without further ado, let's take a deep dive in today's topic. So, what would someone in your profession generally do?
Well, Russell Junior, that's a great question, actually. Typically, when someone thinks of sales as a profession, they think of used car salesman or the guy who's calling you on your phone saying, "Hi, sir, do you need cleaning services or XYZ?" They're selling you something you don't want. But in the case of enterprise tech sales, what you need to understand it's actually business to business sales. You may not realize it, but typically within industries or within businesses, you're always selling services to each other. For example, today, if you have a big bank or a big organization, they are typically not doing their own, you know, IT professional services or managing their IT infrastructure, or managing how things work in the, I guess, even real estate space. They're always working with partners to help, either clean their offices or properties, or, for example, in the IT world, getting someone to manage their security, etc. So in the world of enterprise tech sales, I would say it's not just selling something to someone because you're here to make money. It's about truly solving a problem. And that's what I consider myself in my profession, which is, sometimes when you started in sales, at least I did when I started back in the day with smaller enterprises and smaller startups and scale ups, I actually did a lot of cold calls, reaching out to hundreds of customers and restaurants, for example, to say, "Hey, are you interested in our product?" But once you are on the phone with someone or email them or call them, it's fundamentally discovering if there is a problem they are currently facing that can be solved with the solution your company is trying to sell them. Or in this case, it's important to also understand, okay, how do you showcase to them the cause and effect of what they're implementing or not going to implement? What's the impact on their business? Example, if they don't improve this efficiency by using this IT software, then they're losing 10% productivity in a year. And if you're saying there are 50 employees, then you multiply the numbers and you do the math to them and you show them that if you make them this investment, there's a great ROI. So I think fundamentally, in addition to just having a business problem and identifying the business problem, providing your customer with the solution, it's also then working with various stakeholders within the business to ensure they agree that from a CFO perspective, it lines up, from a marketing perspective or a even legal perspective, everything works together. So it's fundamentally working your relationships into specific accounts where over a period of time you become a trusted advisor. And then as you build the relationships, it becomes easier to potentially sell them additional products. And last but not least, it's about closing the deals and contract negotiations. And then finally, usually, once you sell something, it's important to also ensure you successfully deliver upon it and transferring that within your internal teams and stakeholders to ensure that the customer is happy with the actual delivery of the product, because you sold them something and you don't want to say, "Hey, look, buy a BMW," but when it turns out it's a Mercedes. No, sometimes customers want very specific things, and I think fundamental to that point, it's you know taking sales and sales professions and really building a relationship and really understanding your customers' needs, and finally just being able to be there even in times of needs when things go wrong for them, saying, I am your trusted advisor. I can help you. So that's a bit about, how my profession kind of varies from end to end. There are sometimes cases where, you have to just hit the phones or email people. Sometimes you have to attend a lot of trade shows, you're on the road, but it depends on what sort of sales you're in. Some of it is industrial sales, but in my case, which is enterprise technology sales, I kind of explain to you what my career journey looks like, as well as what my day to day looks like, for example. And yeah, it's a lot of meetings. It's sometimes a lot of internal meetings as well as external meetings. It's a lot of Excel sheets to keep track of things. And yeah, and sometimes it's the fun customer relationship meeting at a local baseball game or an NBA game, for example, and that's the fun part of it. Yeah,
Yes, I'm sure every day must be a different experience for you.
exactly.
And what made you decide to pursue this particular profession?
I think, looking back when I was probably back in, doing my O levels actually. And for some of you who may or may not know, that's pretty much what, grade 9 or 10, correct me if I'm wrong, right? Um, I obviously knew I liked IT because obviously IT as a trend, I grew up in the age where you started to have cell phones with 3G or 4G or data, or phones that had keypads into full screens. So technology always fascinated me. I love playing with technology. So, obviously I took IT as a program, but then I also did a bit of commerce. And then I was like, oh, maybe I want to do some engineering or physics. So I think, going back to the subjects, it was, technology interested me. And then I said, okay, once I came to university, I decided, I'll pursue that. I said, business and technology is where things intersect. But I think fundamentally from my program, which was the business technology management program, which you mentioned, typically you think, okay, maybe you become a business analyst or an IT analyst, or, you become a project manager. Um, it's kind of interesting because in my profession, which is sales, um, we have, as part of the business technology management program, something called co-op, or for some would say internship. So actually, for 3 summers and 1 term, I actually have to go get experimental learning in my field of study. In this case, technology. And for me, actually, you were mentioning a bit about how I um, took part in a lot of different organizations in university. And those organizations basically taught me how to partner with bigger organizations. And we were the university where I understood that, I'm selling, I would say, students or their careers or professionals, and I was finding them potential employers who was looking to hire students. And I like that experience of partnerships, or even just saying, hey, we're doing this conference, can you fund us X amount of dollars? And I enjoyed the fact of reaching out to people, building relationships, and creating a community or creating a new product. And so when I started my co-op, going back to that, I initially thought I wanted to be in banking and finance because, example, in Toronto, where I'm based, banking is a big, big industry. But I did my first co-op in a typical IT sort of management sort of role, and I soon realized that I do not want my day to day to be exactly the same. I wanted every day to be different. I wanted to have exposure to clients, external stakeholders. I wanted to talk to different people within my own organization, and even just go out there, dress up, be professional, attend trade shows, attend events is kind of what made me choose this profession and eventually say, hey, I want to do sales. And so I truly do, you know, I think that's a bit about how I got here, but I think I really like the challenge of even just, talking to people, problem solving, being creative with my approaches, no day being the same. And I think the element of always getting to travel, to different countries, experience new cultures, as well as just even meet new people and understand their backgrounds is truly what made me choose this profession. And I mean, let's not forget, with every profession also comes compensation. And the fundamental thing with sales is it's kind of like being an entrepreneur, where the effort you put in typically will be rewarded. Now, it depends on how your commission structure is in each of your organizations, but not only are you making a base salary, which probably pays the bills and keeps the lights on, but you have the opportunity to, you know, make an infinite almost amount of money if you're really good at your job and the company that you work for really rewards you. And I think the fact being that you're in control of your own destiny to an extent, and it's not a typical career progression where you get a wage increase or a salary increase or a promotion every 2 years in a specific way. There are very few roles in I guess the sales profession, but you start to understand the different sectors or learn new technologies or learn new things to sell. So I think overall, that's kind of what made me choose the profession. Just the fact that it's in technology. Technology is constantly evolving. It interests me, and every day I'm learning. There's no end to learning, in my opinion, and that's what keeps me motivated day in and day out.
I'm certain that every day must be a roller coaster experience for you.
Hmm. Agreed. And yeah, sometimes you have bad days, sometimes you have bad years, sometimes you have good years, right? So it all averages out to that extent.
Yes. And what choice of subjects did you do in college to enable you to get into this profession?
So I mean, when I look at, I think I touched upon this a bit earlier as well, meaning, when I started off just doing my O and A levels, I was kind of torn between commerce as well as science. Fundamentally, obviously, subjects like maths always helps understand because let's be honest, computers, when you think about it, they work on a series of zeros and ones, and coding and programming is typically having that math helps you. At the same time, nowadays you have ChatGPT and Excel, right? So AI to kind of teach you all that other fun stuff, or even the fact being that you have a calculator, right? In this day and age, when you come to a corporate world, guess what? You're not being asked to do manual math. You're asked to use a calculator because guess what? You're not trusted to do the math correctly manually. You probably need to do a calculator and want to make sure you do it on Excel to ensure it's accurate, right? But I think in terms of subjects, it's, I started going down the route of, IT and like, I guess, just the overall concept of business and commerce. Um, versus I knew for a fact I didn't want to go into the accounting and finance stream where I was a person doing books or more number crunching, in my opinion. So I kind of stayed away from subjects like that. Example, I didn't do accounting. I think having the ability of choosing, I had, ICT or IT as you call it, along with physics, kind of gave me the option of both worlds. Uh, and in addition to that, it's the business fundamentals and even just economics as a whole, which taught me how businesses work, how the global economy works, expecting when a downturn can happen, how the housing market affects people's buying decisions, how enterprises are affected by what's happening in the labor market. So those all play a factor in terms of demand and supply and understanding how that all works. So that's a bit about prior to university and college per se. But once in university, which was at Ryerson University, I chose a Bachelor of Commerce program, and that program actually business technology management. When you think of it, you're like, okay, it sounds like business management, but technology's in it. And it's tough not to confuse it with a typical computer science program where you are being taught to become a programmer or a coder or something more on the data analysis side. In this case, my program taught me a mix of business and technology together. It taught you the fundamentals of business, which to me is important to understand. So, as I said, macroeconomics, understanding globalization. And I think in every university, you always have your main core subjects, you'll have your electives, and then there's something which everyone takes. So, for me, with business technology management in my first 2, 3 years, obviously you take the courses which everyone's expected to take, such as, business process design, system analysis and design and implementation. But over a period of time, I said, oh, let me see what project management now. So I took a project management course, but then I realized that's not for me. And so in my final few years, I kind of got to choose specific IT subjects, such as, concept of e-business, to truly understand, certain elements of the industry. And I think more importantly, it's important to understand that in addition to just your core subjects, you always have electives. So, like some electives of mine included effective persuasion, which was great because, in sales, you're trying to persuade someone to buy something or believe that they trust you. Or business law, understanding, what legal implications are there when selling someone, you know, some IT software and just understanding what are liabilities, what are the different parts to the legal side of things, because guess what, in corporation everything has to be signed off by someone illegal, right? So it's subjects like those. Obviously you learn the basic stats and the finance, but those are very introductory courses, and it's up to you to kind of decide, okay, do I want to take a critical thinking course? Do I want to take a course that even teaches you about sales? And that's what I did. My university actually, going back to the previous conversation too, was with co-op. When I first told them, listen, I want to do a co-op, I did obviously one of the leading institutions, banking in Canada, and it was an IT role. And then in my second role, and this was back in 2016 or 17, I told them I wanted to do a sales role in this tech startup, and they said, oh, that's not technology. I'm like, what do you mean? It's sales. They saw it more as customer service, but I was like, it's off an IT product. I had to convince them that, look, this is a career profession, business to business sales of IT products. And now, as I graduated out of university, I was actually part of a group where we actually founded a sales initiative group by students for students, where we taught other students the the methodologies of sales. And today I'm proud to say that, that has turned into actually a course the school offers and a program. And nowadays there are students who I talk in second and third year of university saying, oh, when I want to graduate, I want to be in tech sales. And when I was there, that wasn't the same case. And so to me, the industry is always evolving, and it's up to you to kind of decide as to what industry best suits you. And just know that it will also change. It can change. There are new and emerging trends on a daily basis. But the fun part of sales is, I think, you know, anyone can kind of get into it, and I'll get into that a bit later in terms of, how can someone get into this field, right? So yeah.
Yes. And how did your working career progress?
So I think from a career progression standpoint, I mentioned a bit about my co-ops and degrees, right? So I will be honest. Typically, you do start off in a smaller startup. You're talking a 2, 3, 5, 10 person company, and you're doing some of the nitty-gritty sales of calling people, emailing people, and really going out there and putting yourself out there, to be honest. Then I did also scale up in between. But, for me, example, working at IBM, I think everyone knows the big three letters IBM. Um, I think just career progression, from I look at it, starts there too. Is just I did those student groups where I sold, our university to organizations. I did these smaller startups and scale ups. I worked at a big bank. So I kind of showed, look, I do understand how big enterprises and organizations works, which have, 30, 50,000 odd employees. So, when it came to that, from a just landing the internship, which was in my final co-op, I came to them saying, look, I already have had sales experience in 2, 3 other small organizations. I've worked in a big enterprise such as a bank. So it's kind of merging those two together to say, look, this is the experience I had. And from a career progression perspective, I want to say, like, career progression happens at any stage. This is from an intern to a co-op to a part-time job to volunteering. There's always progression being made, and that's think of how do you climb the ladder. So from there, with the internship, I did a great job at it. We won a challenge as well, a great presentation, things like that. And they offered me a full-time job to come back before my final university year. And that's, great from a career progression perspective. I don't have to worry about, finding a job once I graduate, especially being an immigrant here in Canada. Obviously, I have 2, 3 years to find a job, but, it my dream job, to be completely transparent. When you think of the big tech companies, you think Google, Microsoft, IBM, for example. But I tell people the same advice, being you can't just apply to IBM as your first job ever straight out of, in your second year of university. They probably won't accept you even if it's a co-op or internship. You need to show you have some prior experience in smaller companies somewhere. And then from there, I think, I obviously now am at Kyndryl, and it's a bit of a funny story. Once I graduated, they put you into a 6-month sales program at IBM where you are flown down to the US every second or third week. You are paired and mentored with senior retired professionals who have done it all. And they teach you not just what's, on a slide deck, they teach you what has happened throughout their lives and really understanding how to have a customer conversation, how to do object handling, for example. So I think from a career progression, as you build those skills, you typically are then seen for promotions. And so for me, in my first role, I was selling digital workplace services, which was basically products which help companies and their end users and employees. So think laptops, think mobile phones, technologies like that. And so as I was saying earlier, but with sales, um, you have very few titles: account manager, account executive, or as I said in my some of my internships or co-ops where I was doing cold calling and things like that. Those are typically business development representative roles where you're asked to do more outreach, was so more outbound versus inbound. So typically in a career progression, in sales, you have business development rep or account manager, some people call it that. Then you go into a senior business development account manager role. And what that means is this kind of replicates across the board, where you can then choose to become into a managerial position where you become a team lead or a manager, or you become a, example, my current role at Kyndryl, and going back to, IBM, I had another role where I was covering the same technology. But guess what? When I first started selling it, I was selling it into just specific uh, mid-sized companies in a specific region in Canada. But over time, after 6 months is typically when you evaluate it based on your sales numbers. They might say, you know what, we have a need for you to cover X region, which is, in Canada being so large, it could be another province which may be French speaking. But even though I may not know French, they still want me to cover it because they see I have the technical expertise. So, kind of progressing wise, they give you larger sectors, they give you larger accounts where we're talking deals instead of $100,000 becomes $1 million or vice versa. And, that could be said the same in any country too, where countries you could be covering one country, but then next they give you a region, right? So you're typically selling the same product or services, but then you're selling it to a different tier of customers, if that makes sense. And so now, example, with IBM and Kyndryl, we were once IBM, our technology services, but Kyndryl actually got spun out of IBM. And because we were such a large organization, 90,000 people by ourselves, they realized we had two different strategic objectives. So yeah, there are teams and processes carry over. And with that, there was career progression there. When someone says you're moving into a new organization, I mean, I didn't choose it. I'm confused where this is going to go. So sometimes you have to go with the flow. And I think when I moved over from IBM to Kyndryl, we were now trying to focus more on the professional based labor services. And so from a career progression perspective, you might know in technology, you can be selling software as a service, SaaS, which is, think of your typical iCloud or Google Drive, where you pay a monthly subscription, you have access to a software, it's easy. Or you could be selling actual hardware, physical products that have to be delivered to your customer. So I had some experience with that. I had some experience selling professional services. Because guess what? When you buy this hardware or you buy these products or even just buying cloud technologies, for example, you need someone to implement it or manage it, for example. And that's where our company came into the mix as well. We kind of saw end to end. And so now in my new role, you know, yeah, you get salary increases around along the way, you get promotions. Uh, Now my official new title is, sales partner, and that could be eventually a lead sales partner in the next few months, hopefully. Uh, and then from there, you can go associate director, director, VP, etc. So in my organization, it is now they're trying to make it more concrete in terms of the overall career progression and structure. But that being said, you could probably be in the same role or similar sort of sector. And because you're in sales, you might be making more and more money year over year just because, you know what, your targets are getting bigger and you're hitting those numbers. So in my opinion, in sales, it's not as oh, I'm now a first people manager to make X amount of money. No, you don't have to be. You can be an account executive and still, progressing in your career because you sell to bigger clients or you have a really good client that gives you all the business. So hopefully that makes sense. uh,
I'm sure the transitions must have been smooth for you with building up the knowledge and experience over the years. It must have come quite a hand.
mhm.
And what would you say is a necessary expertise or the most critical skill for someone to have within this field?
Ooh, uh, it's sales is an interesting one, right? I think I would go with just active listening and being relatable. Because in sales, like, yeah, you can have different industries and different technologies, but you're always learning that anyone can almost learn. It's the people skills. It's sometimes the soft skills that also really matters, in my opinion. And when I say that, it means when you're having a conversation with someone, it's picking up on things they might say, either it's about their personal family or something they like, or if they say, oh yeah, we're having this business problem, it's being able to pick out that issue they had and kind of be able to ask them deeper questions as to what's the root cause of it. And also just mimicking their behaviors. If someone is, relaxed and casual, you want to be relaxed and casual and feel like they trust you. It's like talking to their best friend. And fundamentally, you want to make sure make them feel understood and that they're welcoming to that extent. And typically in a lot of sales roles, people just sell, 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 and forget that there's a human behind it. And it's about problem solving. It's about consultative sales, is what I would say it is, right? So it's making them feel like when they are talking, that they're the only person that matters, and we're going to make their life a whole lot better. So fundamentally, I would say that's some of the skills you need from a personal perspective. From expertise, I mean, it's staying on top of IT trends, doing different certifications from different top IT companies typically can help you along the way. And yeah, I mean, school will teach you a certain amount of industry baselines and understanding how computers work or what a database is or what a primary key is. But it's up to you to further hone in on your skill by doing, a project management course or whatever else you deem is necessary. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say it is the case. And just being able to, in sales, it's putting yourself out there, being willing to you don't necessarily have to be an introvert or an extrovert per se, but just being willing to put yourself out there, have those conversations. And if you walk into a room at a party and you're the person going around talking to people and, liking to make plans with a bunch of friends all the time, then guess what? That's what sales is somewhat about, right? It's bringing people together to achieve something great. So yeah.
Yes. And if someone were keen to go into this field, what words of
Yep.
advice would you give them?
So if someone was to go into the field of, enterprise sales, and you could also just go into the field of enterprise technology. And the reason why we split off enterprise, we add the word enterprises. Enterprise, we're talking large scale companies. The way things work is a bit different. Contracts, things to sign off take like 5, 10, 15 approvals. It can take a week, it can take 2 weeks. Or in my case, a sales cycle is 6 to 8 months. A typical person would think, okay, you close the deal in 1 or 2 weeks or a month and it's done with, right? Um, for me, I would say like, in terms of advice, there's it's a bit of a grind to begin with. Yes, you have to do that business development role where you're making those cold calls or putting yourself out there. Some of my friends went and did door-to-door sales. They knocked on people's doors selling solar panels, for example. It is a bit of grind. It can be tough, but know that I would say you can always look at sales as almost a career which you can always get into. And that's the fun part of it. I know a lot of my friends and colleagues who come from different diverse educational backgrounds. Yeah, does it help that I'm in business technology? I understand things a bit more quicker. Yes. But I know people who don't have a business degree. And guess why? Because as I mentioned earlier, with enterprise tech sales, you're selling into multiple different industries, right? Yeah, in my case, I am selling IT software, but enterprise sales, if you want to call it too, could be a broader industry. You could be in medicine and selling medical technology devices like, I don't know, X-ray machines or whatever to dentist offices or vice versa. You get what I'm saying? So I think there's that element of it. And even just people who are psychologists or people who understand human behavior or do behavioral science, they could be great salespeople too, in my opinion, because they understand how people think and work. So I think in terms of overall words of advice for people who are interested in enterprise tech sales, for example, is A, know that you're always going to be learning. Keep in touch with the IT industry trends. Put yourself out there. I mean, for me, fundamentally, LinkedIn was a big proponent of where I am today, or just going to different career fairs, going to different uh, events, just putting yourself out there, being able to present yourself, showcase that you not just are presenting yourself, but I mentioned skills, active listening being one. Just when you're having conversation with recruiters or managers, just being able to truly understand what they're saying, asking them questions back where they feel valued as well. Having a good elevator pitch, knowing your value definitely helps and goes a long way. And just know that, once you do get into the field, you will have good years, you will have bad years where you don't make as much money, or you might not like the sector you're working in, or the accounts you're working on doesn't really help you meet your numbers. But know that, you know, there is change coming, you're open to the change, and sometimes you'd have to take some calculated risk along the way, right? So that's something what I would say to someone getting to my field, know that every single day is going to be different. If you want the same day, day in and day out, then maybe sales is not the career profession for you. Then again, it depends. But yeah, overall, it's customer relationship, it's building, it's growing a network, and every day being different is fundamentally what I would say is the fun part of it. And that's that for me in terms of advice for whether you're in university or even just college or as you progress. You sometimes never know where life's going to take you. Typically, you want to evaluate yourself 1, 3, 5 years out. And to my point, you think you want to go in banking or finance, but you realize it's not it for you. And I know till today people are you know making career moves, and we live in the world where you're globally exposed to different industries. You can work from almost anywhere for any company and in that nature, right? And um, you know, a job is only, I get it, it's a great way of income, but fundamentally you're working for a majority of your life. So you want to ensure that whatever you're doing and working uh, is something you will enjoy, right? And if you're not enjoying it, and when you wake up in the morning, you dread going to work on a Sunday or Monday morning, that means, yeah, you're making money, but are you feeling self-fulfilled? So that's what I would say with whatever field or whatever industry, know that, you know, it might be something you thought you would like, but guess what? Over a period of time, if it doesn't interest you and you're not motivated anymore, then maybe find something to switch or change or ask for new job responsibilities, etc. So that makes you more interested in doing the job, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's that.
I'm certain the viewers would have found this very helpful. Thank you for your time, Mr. Pereira.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to the viewers for watching.